Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Chaos Head Noah. We're right back in the action with all this lovely chaos that we see before us. A lot of people hurting each other, punching each other. Just overall violence and truly chaos. This truly is the most amount of Chaos Head Noah that we have ever seen. Gotta get the title in there somehow. But yeah, that's kind of where we left off. There was just so much that happened in the last episode with Nanami, I guess, getting her D-sword because she's a gigalomaniac. Rimi is now captured by Norose, who I guess is the big bad guy that we have to defeat. Even so, he didn't really have too much of a presence from the get-go, but yeah, he's the mastermind. And, oh yeah, Takumi, he also unlocked his D-sword. He finally has the power that he's been trying so hard to obtain, and now he has it. And now we have to get rid of the porters, which we've seen a little bit of throughout the playthrough so far. They're the ones with the backpacks that are trying to, I guess, mind control, if you will, people, or make them do crazy stuff like what we're seeing here. Holding my breath, I took a step forward. In front of me was the chaotic crowd. Without a trace of order, they moved throughout the scrambled crossing as they pleased. Beating each other within an inch of their lives, it would be difficult to go straight through. I hacked the delusions of the people in the direction of the target, and so little by little the people in my field of view made way, and there a path was made for me. There was a single man about 50 meters from me, and all the obstacles between me and him had now been removed. Our eyes met. He was a plump man in a suit wearing a rucksack on his back. Taking the shortest path there, I ran, straight ahead, through the crowd, without bumping into anyone, all while dragging my D-sword along with me. The porter, having noticed me, frantically turned around and tried to run, but I wouldn't allow it. Just like Senna, I swung my D-sword, a blade longer than I was tall. As always, it felt weightless. I could wield it like it was an extension of my arm. The tip of the D-sword dug into the rucksack, and then, almost as if it had been melted at an unfathomably high temperature, its contents were vaporized. The man sank to the ground, cradling his head as he trembled from fear. Without looking at him even one more time, I headed for the second one. Below O-Front. Once again, the obstacles leading up to it began to disappear, and a path was built. The man who stood there was extremely thin, wore a checkerboard shirt and a pair of jeans. He had long hair and his skin was alarmingly pale. He seemed to be holding a bag, which he was treating with great care. Noticing me, he tried to blend into the crowd, but before he could do anything, I threw my D-sword. Wow. Just straight up throwing it now, huh? Fly. I formed a delusion. Ignoring all known laws of physics, it flew parallel to the ground, soaring faster and faster. It delicately corrected its path and then pierced the man's bag with unmatched accuracy. It emitted a faint light and the man fell to the ground. Just one more. I approached the man now on the ground and retrieved my D-sword. The third one was in front of Hachiko. I had seen that porter countless times by now. Actually, let me be more precise. I had talked to them almost every day. The crowd dissipated, and for the third time, a direct path appeared. And at the end of it was a woman wearing white scrubs. Oh no. A fact that made her conspicuous as could be.
あなたが3人目です。葉月さん。いや、グリム。
Oh. Interesting. Okay. The nurse who had smiled so gently at me at the hospital was now glaring daggers at me. She had a large handbag with her, most likely there was a Noah 2 terminal inside.
真実を暴くんだ。彼女がしてきたことをこの場にいる人たちに提示すれば、この熱病のような混乱は収まる。
What she did?
彼女がグリムなら、これまでの不自然な言動に君は気づいているはず。 僕が最初に君に接触した時のことを思い出して。僕は君に貼り付け事件の予言をした。君への継承だった。でも僕よりも先に貼り付けを予言した人間がいる。
Ah, okay. I remembered the exchange we'd had at that time. A few moments before Shogun talked to me for the first time, Grim had left the chat room. But right before that, they'd posted an image as a joke, a drawing. The very same drawing that Hazuki-san had scribbled on the medical chart. The drawing had been very poorly done, but what mattered was what it was depicting, the crucifixion case. Besides, the first time Grim had talked to me about the NewGen case, they had said this: "It's all up in your neighborhood, lol." Even though I had never told them I lived in Shibuya. Even a few hours earlier, Grim had left some comments that had made it seem like they knew I was Nishijo Takumi. You're a celebrity, so you'll be the center of attention. The second time I'd gone to the hospital, Hazuki-san had said,
高階先生はもういません.
And a week later, Dr. Takashina's corpse had been found. I swallowed back my saliva.
あの人が真犯人?
Sorry, was getting a drink. Her mind was right before me. If I looked inward, I could see. Is she actually the real killer?
信仰の救いあれ.
Or at least one of them, maybe? Midnight fell on AH Tokyo General Hospital, the place of Hazuki Ishino's work. Within one of its operating rooms, the nurse stood nearly still. On the bed lay a young man, Kanoe Chizuo. There we go. The sleeping pills he had been given had induced a deep coma in him.
信仰の救いあれ.
As she repeated the same words over and over like a Buddhist prayer, Hazuki caressed her large, swollen abdomen. She slowly removed her white scrubs and then sat atop the operating table, scalpel in hand. Oh no. Oh no, dude. No.
救いあれ.
No. Then, with no anesthesia to speak of, she incised her own abdomen. An incision so masterfully done, it would have earned her incredible praise from surgeons and alike. Obstetricians? Let's go with that. Although she was a mere nurse, her surgical skills were quite remarkable. Even while enduring the uninhibited pain of her self-surgery, the incision she made in her abdomen was performed with the utmost dexterity. Blood and amniotic fluid flowed from the wound, her face contorted in pain. Then, after a few grueling moments passed, Hazuki inserted her own hand inside her abdomen, and from within her, she removed a blood-stained fetus. The fetus had yet to reach full maturity, and its forced removal had already ended its life prematurely. Hazuki performed cutting the umbilical cord. Upon completion of this, she embraced her child lovingly and then placed it on the stand next to the operating table. With her hands now free, she began suturing her wound. The whole ordeal took nearly an hour to complete. With the sheer amount of pain the procedure procured, any normal person would have fainted long ago, or, died because of shock and all that. Returning the fetus to her embrace, she stood up from the operating table and approached the man lying down on the bed. With bloodshot eyes, she looked down toward the unconscious man's face and thrust the scalpel into his abdomen. The movement was reckless and without care, providing a vast contrast to how delicately and accurately she had torn open her own abdomen before. The pain roused the man, but before he could consider any hope of escape, he realized both his arms and legs were tied securely to the bed. Disregarding the man's screams, Hazuki drew back the scalpel she had used to stab him. It cut through his flesh, tore through his skin, blood gushed forth, covering her face in crimson.
信仰の救いをあなたに。
She neared her hands to the victim's wounds, and then she forcefully began to widen it horizontally. The sound of flesh being torn open echoed throughout the operating room. The man's body started violently convulsing as the pain forced him to undergo a cycle of fainting and then waking up again. As she gazed at the gaping wound, Hazuki smiled a gentle smile. She then took her own child, which she had just taken from herself, and forcibly pushed it inside the man's gaping wound. I don't remember, when did we go to the hospital the first time? Because
信仰の救いあれ。
didn't we see this nurse here pretty early on? I feel like we did, but I don't remember. Was it really after like what, the third or fourth case? The third case was the crucifixion, right? Or was that the second? Damn, I can't remember anymore. I really can't remember which case is which. I need the list. So what happened next? Midnight fell on AH Tokyo General Hospital, the place of Hazuki Shino's work. Within one of its operating rooms, the nurse stood nearly still. On the bed lay her psychiatrist colleague, Takashina Fumio. He was tied to the bed, but this was not the only thing that had been done to him. His cranium had been opened and his brain was exposed. His skull had been cut cleanly, the line being right above his eyes.
高階先生に信仰の救いあれ。
Wait, if his brain is exposed, he should be dead. There's absolutely no way that any person can live with their brain exposed, right? Takashina was conscious. Due to the effects of the anesthesia, he did not feel any pain from the cut. The utter dread he felt kept his eyes wide open, and his body was sweating greatly.
救いあれ。
Yikes. Ignoring Takashina's pleas for his life, Hazuki retrieved a shiny silver utensil from the pocket of her white scrubs. A utensil that could not be referred to as a traditional surgical tool. It was a spoon, an all too ordinary piece of tableware. Hazuki reveled in ecstasy. As if enjoying a meal of curry and rice, she took a spoonful of Takashina's brain. Okay, that should immediately kill him. That should immediately just like, he's out. She then took the spoon and violently cast the contents into a stainless steel tray. The pink brain tissue was pulped into a jelly-esque substance. Hazuki thrusted the spoon inside the brain once again. This time, however, she accumulated even more matter than she had the first time as she scraped away the brain tissue. Takashina's own brain was getting removed from his body, yet he felt no pain, nor did he lose consciousness. As well as this, the anesthesia had robbed him of any freedom of movement whatsoever. All the man could do was tremble in fear. He shouldn't be able to do anything anymore, to be honest, but okay.
これがあなたの記憶なんですね。
Hazuki Shino looked up at the projection in shock. On the Scramble Crossing's 4 massive jumbotrons, her very own memories were being shown. She couldn't even understand how it was being done. Perhaps it was Nishijo Takumi's power as a gigalomaniac.
あなたの記憶です。
With his head hung low and D-sword in hand, Nishijo Takumi murmured those words. The riot came to a halt. Silence was now the ruling entity. The thousands of people, who had been assailing each other until only a moment ago were now looking up toward the screens. Some went pale, some averted their eyes, some felt such horror it compelled them to vomit. The mass media were starting to record Hazuki with their cameras. Countless blinding flashes ensued.
あなたがニュージェネ事件の真犯人だったんだ。
And she might not be the only one. I really wonder about the first case because we did hear the sound of a wheelchair. But yeah, the crucifixion, it was probably her. I don't know how, but it probably was. Actually, yeah, instead of seeing Rimi there, we may have actually seen, she may have been here, or at that scene. That might have been her. Or maybe it was Rimi, I don't know. But two cases definitely we can, vouch for. The guy having his blood completely drained is another one for sure. I mean, all of them, when you think about it, they're definitely medically induced or due to some sort of procedure. So, yeah, they're fucked up, but yeah, I mean, somebody with medical knowledge could have most definitely done something.
私の記憶を映像に投影したんですね。
もう言い逃れはできませんよ。胎児とあなたの DNA を鑑定すればわかることです。
I'm surprised that wasn't done yet.
どうしてあんなことを。ねえ、クリム。
I, again, did not even know that she was ever pregnant at any time.
ナイトハルト。すべては教祖様のお言葉なんですよ。
Hazuki plunged her hand into the bag resting over her shoulder. From it, she retrieved both a Noah 2 terminal port and a scalpel. She gripped the scalpel and placed it right against her own throat. Due to the nature of her position as a nurse, she knew the location of the carotid artery all too well. Hazuki smiled at Nishijo Takumi. It was a kind smile, much like the one she would so oft show her patients.
信仰の救いあれ。
Alright, bye, I guess. As her own blood gushed forth from her neck, her entire body was painted a bright crimson. Wow, alright. Huh.
エスパーだ。
救世主だわ。
I didn't know who, but someone had mumbled those words. After seeing the sheer number of gazes piercing through me, I realized that those words were also directed at me. In front of a countless number of people, Hazuki Shino had committed suicide via slitting her throat. Although calling it a what now might have been more accurate, the choking smell of blood filled the air. The riot had now entirely stopped. Hazuki Shino's memories of the crime she'd committed, which I had projected directly onto the Jumbotrons, ended up being the perfect thing to make the excited parts of the mob quiet down. The shocking nature of what had been displayed left everyone at a loss for words. Even now, Hazuki Shino's corpse was still bleeding. A number of people then walked up to it and began kicking it. Lovely. The chaos is still ensuing. It was the corpse of an atrocious murderer, so there were no respects to be paid here. Next, they might even publicly behead her like it was the Middle Ages. What difference was there between her and the ones kicking her corpse? By their very nature, humans were disgusting, horrible creatures, myself included. The media, like hyenas, were accumulating around anything that could act as a scoop. Roughly half of them had gathered around Hazuki Shino's corpse, and the other half were surrounding me.
西尾君、お見事でした。
今のは超能力ですか？やはりエスパーだったんですね。すごいです。
今日のこの集まりは初めから真犯人をおびき寄せるためのものだったの？
あなたの超能力は何歳頃に現れたものなんですか？
子供の頃のあだ名は神童とか呼ばれたことある？
今後警察の捜査に協力する予定は？
うちの局の番組に出てくれないかな？
One after the other, endless words of praise were thrown my way.
西条、よくやったぞ！
たくみくん、こっち向いて。
お前すげえよ！
好きです。付き合ってください。
One after the other, endless words of affection were thrown my way. I felt hollow hearing those voices, a fabricated image formed by public opinion and a delusionary being. They weren't all too different, were they? Takumi, Takumi, Takumi. It was all coming back. The energy they'd all shown when they'd seen me on top of O-Front. Takumi, Takumi, Takumi.
うるさい！
Unable to take it anymore, I screamed.
手のひら返して英雄扱いかよ、バカみたいな。
Tears started flowing. I felt completely miserable. I felt completely ridiculous. I didn't have it in me to keep going without crying. I wasn't a hero.
僕はキモオタで、セーラタンのエロいフィギュアにハーハーしてる変態だ。18歳未満だけどヘロゲして萌えって言ってる男だ。頭の中じゃ街を歩く女どもを裸にひんむいてエロい妄想してる。それが僕だ。
Tears and mucus smeared down my face. I forgot I was being broadcasted live across the entire country. It didn't even occur to me that I was shaming myself yet again. I couldn't help it. I was physically incapable of reading the room.
そうだよ。これでも僕は英雄かよ。違う。僕は英雄なんかじゃない。所詮、妄想の存在で、キモオタで、一人じゃ何もできないヘタレだ。
The voices around me went quiet. The onlookers sank into silence. The people from the media looked at me dubiously. Within the heart of Shibuya, in the middle of the humongous scramble crossing, only my voice was echoing.
それが僕だ。お前らに他人に僕っていう人間を決めさせない。僕の本質は僕が決める。僕はお前らのおもちゃじゃない。見せ物なんかにはならない。僕にはやるべきことがあるんだ。僕はお前たちなんかのために行動しない。
Rimi's smile appeared in my mind.
僕はただ
For the sake of those I cared about, I was here to fight and then disappear. But before I could voice that, I suddenly noticed that the night sky reflected in the corner of my eye was turning pure white. It wasn't a cloud, nor was it snow falling a little too early in the year. By the time I realized it was the same phenomenon from back when the earthquake had hit, it was already too late.
サードメルト予定より早い。
Uh-oh. The first thing I felt was the very earth itself beginning to rumble. The ground began to shake. The white in the sky was spreading further and further. The very next moment, I was struck with a violent ringing in my ears. It was such an intensely shrill, resonant sound. My head felt like it was about to burst open. Everyone else around me was covering their ears too. And then... well, we died. The world was dyed completely white. It was bound to happen at some point, death and all that. So that was chapter 9, and it's a little picture of Suwa. Silent sky, ooh. Alrighty. I was standing atop a body of water, incredibly clear, transparent water. It was shallow, reaching only my ankles, but it was not cold. Intermittently, the waves whispered in my ears. I was tightly grasping the handles of a wheelchair. Shogun, no, the real Nishijo Takumi, was right before me, his head adorned with his knitted cap. He sat ever so slightly hunched forward in his wheelchair. There wasn't a single thing surrounding us. Neither shells buried in the sand, nor seabirds elegantly soaring through the sky. Nothing so expressly emulative of the sea could be seen. There were no signs of life, only the blue sea and the crystal clear sky. The terrain was completely flat all around me. Oh, Minecraft. With the horizon stretching as far as the eye could see. This place was not the real world.
僕はね、近いうちに死ぬんだ。
Together with the sound of breaking waves, I heard Shogun's voice. From where I was standing, I couldn't see his expression. The tone of his voice didn't carry any particular feeling of lamentation. In reality, his words felt like they were simply casual passing remarks.
この体を見てもらえればわかるわかる。
Small wrinkled and withered away. All of his hair had fallen out.
先天的な病なんだ。僕の体の成長は発症した10歳の段階で止まってる。 そして老化して。
Was he aging prematurely? That illness was supposed to be rare, affecting only 1 out of every 8 million people.
10歳って
I personally don't know too much of that. Probably because if that is a real disease, I guess it's really fucking rare. A gruesome scene etched into my memories began to rise to the surface.
あのバス事故の3ヶ月ぐらい前だよ。僕が発症したの。バス事故は君が。そうかもしれない。あの時はまだ自分の力についてほとんど自覚はなかったけど。病が発症するよりずっと前。それこそ物心ついた時から僕はギガロマニアックスとしての力を使うことができた。それが普通のことだと思ってたよ。意識的にしろ無意識的にしろ、僕はこれまで何度も力を使ってきた。だから僕の存在としての矛盾が大きくなりすぎちゃったんだ。青い背中から聞いてるだろ。
粒子とともに追生成される反粒子はディソードにストックされていくんだ。反粒子は数学的に言えば過去へ向かうものだから。ストックすればするほどギガロマニアックスには現在の状態とのズレが発生し、やがてその矛盾により存在としての自己崩壊へ至る。
Yeah, I still don't follow. As he spoke, Shogun didn't move an inch in his wheelchair. What was he looking at? Could he even see at all?
力を使えば使うほどこの病は進行しちゃうんだ。ギガロマニアックスの力で治せばいいじゃないか。力を使えば病は進行する。端的に言えば力を使ってもプラスマイナスゼロっていうことさ。何も変わらない。どうして僕みたいな肝オタのヘタレ野郎を作ったの？もっと強くて行動的でかっこいいイケメンにすればよかったのに。人を一人、しかもギガロマニアックスの力を使える人間を生み出すのは簡単なことじゃなかった。
Yeah, I can roll with that.
君を生み出したんだ。
I can't really argue against
1
that.
年近く昏睡しちゃったくらいだよ。僕は未完成だったってわけ。だからこそ君はとても人間らしい。フォローしなくてもいい。本心だよ。
I clicked my tongue,
リミにはいつも
and I didn't read the rest of that. I think he said that he hated him.
彼女は
I'm really jumping the gun today.
君を助けたいでしょう。でも僕はリミの忠告に従うわけにはいかない。今の危機的状況は僕の IR2 がきっかけなんだから。
IR2, that strange scribble on the back of my essay.
IR2 はある科学者の目に留まり、やがてのぞみテクノロジー社によって研究が始められた。それがプロジェクトノア。言ってみれば人工的にギガロマニアックスの能力を発生させる装置。僕が計画に気づくことができたのはリミと出会ったからなんだ。彼女がひどい拷問を受けていたのはそのプロジェクトの一環だった。ノアのシステムを効率化するために必要だったのがコード3。ギガロマニアックスが力を使う過程で放出する特殊なノウハウのもの。それを手に入れるためにのぞみの社長ノロセはリミに過酷な拷問を加えた。強烈な負の感情を抱くときギガロマニアックスは力に覚醒しディソードを獲得するからね。
Once again, I remembered Senna's words.
バイオリズムの上昇によって 中脳変影系ニューロンのドーパミンが過剰分泌された時、ディソードは現れる。それは危機的な状況や興奮、悲しみ、憎しみ、笑いなど人それぞれだ。
I mean, we've now seen it twice, almost 3 times, really, if you want to count Takumi. But with Nanami and Yua, we have seen their D-swords coming together here through some pretty intense moments.
ドーパミン分泌量が多ければ、それだけ観測しやすくなる。
君が僕にちょっかいをかけてきたのもそのため。
君を覚醒させるためにだ。ごめん。
But Rimi didn't want that. She was actually willing to go against his plans. Rimi and I weren't the only ones. There were others who had undergone severe mental or physical torture because of Project Noah. Ayase, Senna, Kozupi, and even Nanami. Cruel trials that had been laid out for all of them. Also, they could become gigalomaniacs.
IR2 から生み出されたノア2は、僕が自分の手で止めなくちゃならない。でも僕はこんな体だ。満足に動くこともできない。それに、僕のコードサンプルを欲しがる望みから狙われるようにもなっちゃう。
That was to say nothing of how he was hospitalized at AH Tokyo General Hospital, a place which had hidden ties to the Nozomi group.
だから、身を隠さなくちゃいけなかった。
幻の病室のアミーちゃんか。
あそこに入ってこられたのはリミだけだったよ。僕は身動きが取れなくなって、それで
僕を作ったのか。
Yeah, I mean, that sort of makes a little bit more sense. I just feel like a lot of what they went through, I mean, they actually took Nanami's hand. She lost her hand. Like, sure, I guess it's still there and could probably be reattached, but it's never going to be the same for her. They really sacrificed somebody like that just to try and awaken him. They did a lot of shit to try and awaken him. I don't know. I mean, I get it. I don't know how I feel about it. Shogun weakly nodded.
リミには君を消すように何度も言われたんだ。命を削る行為だからやめろって。でも、僕に残された命は長くない。力を使わなくたってあまり差はないんだよね。
His voice was deeply serene. He had a certain sense of wiseness to him. Perhaps it was one you could only get from living out your days under a death sentence.
それに、君が覚醒して力を使えるようになれば、僕の命は持たないだろうか。
僕と君は一心同体っていうこと。
そうだね。
でも、一つだけ約束。もう、妄想はしない。
Yeah, we have not been doing a good job on that promise.
ね。
Just watch the last 2
と
episodes.
っても強いから。妄想をすればするほど、本物のあなたの命が削られていっちゃうんだ。
Yeah, we quite literally were told that, huh? If I tried to keep my promise to Rimi, I couldn't go help her. Even if I could, I wouldn't be able to do a thing. It wouldn't matter what I tried, they turned the tables on me in an instant.
君の命はあとどれぐらい持つ？
きっと今日か明日までじゃないかな。
そこまで。
Well, I mean, it's probably because of the awakening here. I was stunned. I hadn't expected him to have so little time left.
僕が覚醒しちゃったから。
気にしなくていいよ。君の覚醒は僕にとって本望だから。
君が死んだら僕はどうなる？
君は僕と一心同体であると同時にリアルブートされたことによって現実の人間になった。 生まれ方は特殊かもしれないけど、君は人間だよ。
僕が消えれば君は助かるよ。
無駄だよ。せいぜい寿命が数日から数週間伸びるぐらいじゃないかな。でもそんな愚かな選択肢を選ぶのはやめるんだ。君にはノア2を破壊してほしい。そのために力を使うことを遠慮しないでほしい。
言われなくても分かってる。君に遠慮するほど僕はお人よしじゃない。
Shogun's shoulders shook faintly as he laughed. Making him laugh was the last thing I'd meant to do, so that annoyed me.
君が目覚めてくれてよかった。勝手な話で迷惑かもしれないけど、あとは君に託す。
Suddenly, the feeling of the wheelchair's handles disappeared. Before I knew it, the wheelchair he was sitting in began to leave me behind. As it moved, it almost seemed to glide across the surface of the water. Even flow. Its two wheels cut into the water, making waves as they turned. I had no intention of following him. Instead, I absently watched him go.
僕の役目は終わった。
勝手だね。僕に丸投げ。
At least tell us where to go.
少し疲れちゃって。眠らせてよ。
He turned to me from his wheelchair. As usual, I couldn't read his expression, but his voice showed an intense urgency.
時間がない。急いで。ノロセはノア2を本格的に稼働させた。こうなったらノア2を直接破壊するしかないんだ。頼んだよ。
Oh, this'll be fun. And then, as if embraced by a cloud of mist, he began to disappear. The very colors of this mental world slowly began to fade.
君に頼まれる筋合いなんてない。僕自身が決めたことをやるだけ。
The sound of the waves became more distant. Just like Rimi had once, I burned this perfect, crystal clear sky into my memories. And then I gently closed my eyes. I get some Kingdom Hearts vibes from that area. Oh hey, wow, this place looks lovely. A reporter on the radio was reading the news with a grave tone.
現在までに確認された死傷者の数は233人ですが、この数は最終的に3万人を超えると見られ、
Jesus Christ.
気象庁の発表によりますと、今回の地震の規模は震度7、マグニチュードは 7.8 と関東大震災に匹敵する規模です。渋谷では建物の一部が倒壊し、大規模な陥没も発生している模様です。首都高渋谷線が高架の倒壊により全線通行止め。公共交通機関では山手線など全線が運転を見合わせております。
Static mixed in with the news until eventually the reporter spoke no longer.
ダメだわ。また聞こえなくなった。
Momose shook and hit the old radio with her hand, but upon realizing she was getting nowhere, she let out a heavy sigh.
古いから使い物にならないわね。
Whoa. Alright, this is a... Well, you know what? I was going to say this is an interesting duo, but no, this makes sense because they literally met at the hospital. It would make sense for Yua to bring Ayase with her back to Momose. Forcing a smile, she looked to the side. She could see the figures of Kishimoto Ayase and Kusunoki Yua walking along, expressions of fatigue coloring their faces. Both of their uniforms were covered in soot, making it clear how laborious the trek here had been. And yet the great swords they were holding, their D-swords, did not have a speck of dust on them. Instead, they shone with an unclouded, brutal radiance. After the earthquake, Yua and Ayase had walked back to Shibuya from Yoyogi, went straight to the Frisia office, and then joined up with Momose. Waiting for the missing bond to return, the three had stayed near the office throughout the night. Even though the earthquake had put the building on the verge of collapse, they had remained all the same. But in the end, Bond had never shown. Momose suggested leaving Shibuya immediately, something ISA clearly took issue with.
グラジオールが目覚めたのよ。早く他の黒騎士と合流しないと。
ISA asserted her feelings of urgency by tugging on Yua's hand, wanting to reach the rubble-laden heart of Shibuya as quickly as they could. In the end, Yua and Momose had no choice but to follow along. It was 7 in the morning. Not even an hour had passed since the sky had first begun to brighten. There was not a single trace of the refreshing morning air. The utter mayhem that had been cloaked in darkness was slowly being exposed by the rising sun. And right now, the three girls found themselves in the midst of it. The city of Shibuya had been transformed into the very picture of hell itself. Roads returned to oblivion, asphalt protruded from the earth. A number of buildings had collapsed, their debris scattered in broken chunks along the sides of the road. Nearly every window that could be seen was broken, and a massive billboard had fallen from its usual perch atop a building's roof. One would not have to walk far to see countless corpses left undisturbed, littered among the chaos. For every body Momose witnessed, the same act played out inside her head, one in which she clasped her hands together in pity for their demise. But there were just far too many. It was only partway through that she could not take it anymore, realizing the only way to retain her sanity was to ignore them outright. The remaining people they would occasionally pass by had lost all expression, existing only to stagger aimlessly through the streets. A group of men had come together to try and help the survivors buried beneath the rubble, but it did not seem like there was much they could do without heavy lifting equipment. Momose took another glance at what Yua was holding in her hands. A D-sword. ISA had explained them to her. Much like magic, they were swords that could be taken out of thin air. What Bond had told her had been true. And yet Yua seemed only shocked and bewildered about possessing one for herself.
ねえ、岸本さん。
ISA, walking slightly ahead of the group, paid no attention to Momose's call. The expression on her face made it clear her patience was wearing thin.
このディソードを持つ人は、あなたたちを含めて全部で7人いるっていうこと？
Damn, this really is Kingdom Hearts.
そうよ。
他の人たちがどこにいるのかわかるの？
わからないわ。
だったら
感じるのよ。意志を。こっちで間違いないわ。
ISA was effectively a brick wall. With no other options left, Momose repeated the same words for what felt like the 1000th time.
今むやみに歩き回るのは危ないわ。ひとまず安全なところに避難するべきよ。
ダメよ。時間がないの。
もしかしたら他の黒騎士だったかしら。その人たちだって避難場所にいるかもしれないでしょ。
そうですよ、岸本さん。私も避難場所に行くべきだと。
ISA suddenly came to a halt as though Yua's backing had possibly made some sense to her. She narrowed her eyes. And then she looked beyond the rugged Dogenzaka roads that no car could traverse.
いた。え？いたって何が？
Oh boy. At the end of ISA's gaze was a lone girl walking away from the station. She was wearing a Suame Academy uniform, though it was far more tattered than either ISA's or Yua's. And with only her left hand, she was holding an enormous cross-shaped sword to her chest. Her gait was markedly unsteady. It looked as though she could collapse at any moment.
大変!
Momose's body jiggled as she ran toward the girl, toward Nishijo Nanami. The D-sword Nanami was carrying had caught her eye, but instead of prying in order to satiate her curiosity, she focused only on supporting the girl's petite frame.
大丈夫? よく頑張ったわね。今病院に連れて行ってあげるから、気をしっかり持つのよ。
Nanami's eyes responded in blank confusion to Momose's words of encouragement.
え、なんて言ったの？
なの。
Both Yua and Ayase belatedly ran up behind Momose.
この子西条くんの妹さんです。
そう、黒騎士の資格があるのもうなずけるわ。匠の妹な。
二人ともこの子を運ぶのを手伝って。なんとか病院に連れて行かないと。痛い。
Nanami groaned in pain.
右手。
Momose inadvertently glanced toward Nanami's right hand, gasping in surprise when she did.
だって一人こんな。
Yua and Ayase were not able to grasp why Momose was so distraught. While the bandage over Nanami's right hand was indeed stained with blood, it did not seem to be that serious of an injury. What the fuck are you talking about? However, in Momose's eyes, Nanami's hand had been severed from her bandaged wrist. Though medical measures had been taken, it was still an open wound. With a blank look on her face, Ayase attempted to grab Nanami's right hand, but her outstretched hand passed only through empty air. Like a holographic image, Nanami's fingers lacked any substance. A drop of blood trickled down from the red-stained bandage and fell onto Ayase's.
もうそう。
リミさんに助けてもらって。リミさんって崎畑リミさん。
知ってるの？
ええ、西条くんのお友達の。
Yua had always held the suspicion that Takumi was the true NewGen culprit, so she knew a fair amount about his background. This also extended to those who would frequently come into contact with him, therefore it was only natural for her to have conducted investigations on Nishijo Nanami and Sakihata Rimi. In contrast to Yua, Ayase abandoned her typical aloof expression, grimacing at the mere mention of Rimi's name.
崎畑リミも7人の黒騎士の一人。
そうなんですか？
Ayase recalled yesterday's incident at the hospital. She could remember being addressed by Rimi's apologetic voice.
岸本さん、タクに近づかないで。目覚めさせたくないの。
I had a feeling that this was what the conversation was after the, I guess the conflict between Rimi and Senna, and also what Rimi talked to Takumi about afterwards.
君には自覚がないの。黒騎士の一人としての。
私が一人で何とかするから。
Makes sense.
とて
All
も
right.
美しいわ、その思いは。でもそれは大いなる意志の望むことじゃない。私も望んでいないわ。あなた一人に全てを背負わせるなんて。
She did not take her advice.
黒騎士云々の話は今は置いときましょう。とにかく早く病院に連れて行かないと血が止まらないわ。
Momose gently placed her handkerchief on Nanami's open wound.
すごい熱だし顔色も悪い。急がないと。
お兄に会いたいよ。
Tears trickled from Nanami's vacant eyes. Right at that moment, something happened. What the fuck was that? In an instant, the highway they were standing on collapsed with a deafening roar. What the fuck was that? They all lost their footing, helplessly entering freefall at gravity's mercy. To them, it was like they were falling into the deepest, darkest, lowest circle of hell. Losing herself in that illusion, Momose raised a scream so loud it betrayed her age entirely. That was her scream? Okay. Alright. I guess. A little strange, but whatever. Alright, we will call it there for this episode. I think we're actually nearing the end. I don't know. Is chapter 10 the last chapter of the common route? I feel like we've ramped it up, and now it's time to like, now that we have a goal, we have like a story ending goal. I would assume we're kind of approaching that. So is this the last chapter? I wonder how much more we have to go, and then I gotta figure out the rest of this fucking game with its weird-ass route system. But no, this was good. This was a good episode. I'm actually really excited to see how this is all going to end, how this is all going to continue along to the, I'm assuming, approaching ending. So I hope you guys are as excited as I am. I'm sure you guys can tell in my lovely excited voice that I am truly excited to see what happens next. But yeah, thank you all for watching this episode. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz, and I will see you all in the next one. Take it easy.